With us now, Congressman Adam Smith of Washington. He's the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee, so a valued guest today. Congressman, Monday's meeting at the White House has turned into a very high-stakes affair, as Robert was just talking about. What are you expecting to come out of all this?
Well, expecting, I'm not sure. It's hard to tell. President Trump's bounced back and forth. What should come out of this is a strong expression of support for President Zelensky and for Ukraine, and a show of unity with Europe. That strength is needed to force Putin to the table. The summit in Alaska was very disappointing. We took the demand for a ceasefire off the table in exchange for nothing, and also the deference that President Trump showed to Putin, never once just stating the basic notion that Ukraine has a right to exist as a sovereign democratic country and that the invasion was illegal, unlawful. And you contrast that with the way President Trump and Vice President Vance treated Zelensky when he was in the West Wing back in February, and it sends the wrong signal if we're trying to force Putin to the table and get a negotiated end to this war.
Okay, but trading territory for long-term security guarantees from NATO could strike the right balance for Ukraine, right? Sure. What kind of commitment from the West do you need to see to be supportive of this package? What kind of commitment does that represent?
Well, first of all, it makes sense for President Trump to be having these discussions. I mean, to talk with Putin, to talk with Zelensky, to ultimately try to get both of them in the room together. I applaud that effort, but you have to understand what Putin wants out of this. Putin wants all of Ukraine. And he's just trying to play President Trump and buy time to get in a better position to do that. That's the calculation of Putin that has to be changed. So what I want to see is security guarantees for Ukraine, that we are not going to agree to Putin's demand from a couple years ago that Ukraine basically disarm and be, quote, neutral at the end of this war. And we have yet to see clarity on that from the Trump administration. We've seen that clarity from the European partners. Now, I do agree that insisting that, the war will not stop until Ukraine retakes all of its territory, and even some have gone further and said, Putin must be forced to step down and try for war crimes. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't get us to a peace agreement. I understand the justice behind that demand, but if we're trying to end the war, some compromise must be found, but it can't be it can't be on Putin's terms, because if it's entirely on Putin's terms, he won't agree to the ceasefire. He'll keep fighting until he reaches his goals.
Okay, while we've got you, we got to stay on the overseas stuff for a minute. I got to ask you about Israel. Earlier this month, the Israeli government approved a plan to take control of Gaza City, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying that his intention was, temporarily at least, full control of the Gaza Strip. Catherine Clark, who's the #2 Democrat in the House, used the word genocide to describe what's happening in Gaza. You've advocated a middle ground on this conflict between Israel's right to defend itself and humanitarian concerns. Does this Gaza strategy, though, constitute a breaking point with Israel, or is there some hope that a final push could actually bring this war to a close?
It strains the relationship a great deal. What's going on in Gaza is a humanitarian catastrophe. You can get into exactly what you want to call it, but no one can dispute that it is a humanitarian catastrophe for the Palestinian people. And at this point, there is no clear objective in terms of what the war aims are of Netanyahu. I mean, Hamas has hung in there. It is time to end the war. Israel has accomplished a lot of what it set out to accomplish. Certainly, it has weakened Hamas. It has weakened Hezbollah. It has weakened Iran. Israel is not threatened now in the way that they were even 6 months ago or 3 months ago. The war is not, in my view, advancing Israel's interests. It should be ended. Humanitarian aid should be rushed into Gaza. Yes, part of this needs to be return of the hostages, but insisting on a complete surrender by Hamas and a complete destroy will extend this war, and I don't think that is in Israel's best interest. The war should be ended in exchange for the hostages.
Okay, here in D.C., there are hundreds of National Guard troops who are heading to Washington as part of the president's use of emergency powers to fight crime in the district. There are reports of masked agents canvassing the streets, making arrests, some pretty graphic video. Some Democrats have pushed back. Hillary Clinton posted, as you listen to an unhinged Trump try to justify deploying the National Guard in D.C., here's the reality. Violent crime in D.C. is at a 30-year low. Now, Congressman, while President Trump definitely struggles with the difference between can and should, Democrats seem to be having a problem with and. Can't it be true that someone believes Donald Trump is overstepping his authority and that crime remains unacceptably high?
Yeah, no, you just answered exactly the way I was going to answer. What Trump is doing, and the thing that's really concerning about it, is it's not just in D.C. He did it in L.A. He's talked about doing it across the country. He just boosted the Department of Homeland Security's budget by $170 billion. He's massively increasing ICE. He's building detention facilities. This looks like the heavy hand of the federal government stomping on the individual freedoms and rights of Americans, and we should be troubled by it. And crime is too high. And I think Democrats have a mistake if we act like crime is not a policy problem worth worrying about. It is. Both of my children live in Washington, D.C. It's not the safest place in the world. And also some of the policies the Democrats advanced around crime over the course of the last 10 or 15 years very clearly did not work. There was not enough transparency and not enough accountability. So we ought to be able to say that. Continually emphasizing crime isn't a problem, so Trump's just off his rocker. Well, he might be off his rocker, but that doesn't mean the crime's not a problem. So I think, yes, absolutely. Both and is the way we ought to answer that question.
Appreciate it. Okay, Congressman. If you ever riffled through the organic arugula at the Mercer Island Farmers Market, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is. Congressman Adam Smith, we thank you. Okay, joining us now, Republican Congressman Jimmy Patronis of Florida.